Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of the Water Underground Talks Season 2. Today it's our great pleasure to host Anna Maciel de Carvalho, Assistant Professor at the Federal University of Jequitinhonha and Mucuri Valley in Brazil. Anna, welcome and we're very happy to have you with us today.
Thanks for inviting me to be part of this great initiative. It's a real pleasure. Thank you, Viviana.
So we'll start with a few questions to know you and your work better. And the first question that we would like to ask is, when and how did you first develop your passion for water? And in particular, we would like to know if there is some event or people that you met along the way that helped to define your area of research focus.
First, the experience with my parents, who are environmental geographers. They have always valued protecting the environment. And when I was a child, I usually traveled on vacation with my family to beautiful places like parks, national parks, and they always gave me a different look at nature. So my passion started for the environment, and when I decided to my undergraduate in geology, I already wanted to follow this specific area, environment. And with my hydrogeology professor, I liked the topic even more. He knew to show how water is essential for life and teach the beauty of his movement.
Well, thank you for sharing. This is a very interesting story and a very nice starting point. To go more into the detail of your research and also the focus of this second season of Water Underground Talks, we would like to know what is the role or connection between groundwater, anti-racism, decolonization, and sustainable development in your work. And if you can add also something on how do these issues play out in your region or discipline?
Whoa, excellent question. I recommended even a research to answer all these informations. I guess we need to study more about this all connection. But I will try to say briefly what I think about it and my reality too. I live in a region known as Jequitinhonha Valley, which is usually described with some elements: dusty, aridity, sun, heat, river, diamond. If you do a quick Google search on Vale do Jequitinhonha, you will find a region with the lowest development rates in the state of Minas Gerais. You will also realize that a large part of its population lives in extreme poverty. You will see photos of its environment, systematically attacked by mining and charcoal activities and the indiscriminate use of fire by family farming. This is why Jequitinhonha is also known by many as the Valley of Poverty. And this is a reflection of colonialism, where there was and persisted a directed domination in a political, cultural, and social way. Even with the various difficulties they face, especially the lack of water and infrastructure, the communities continue to be vigorous in maintaining their traditionals and their rich cultural legacy. And that's why the Jequitinhonha Valley is rich in music, verse, crafts, and its historical culture heritage is a reference for Minas Gerais and Brazil. Nature does not speak. No one can see groundwater, and the poor, blacks, the colonized, the dominated were silenced in the name of progress and power. To work at a federal university in this region, teaching about groundwater and environmental geology is in itself an act of resistance. The university is recent and the course geology even more since 2014. So the result of a lot of social and political struggle that continues, and visibility and funding is still scarce for our course, especially for this area. Most of the students who come to study here are from this region. They are also descendants of, we know, quilombolas, né? And will acquire knowledge and help in the development of this region. That still needs to develop, this region needs to develop and achieve social and economic advances, valuing traditionals and development potential. I guess this is a connection, groundwater, decolonization, racism, how in this example of my region.
Thank you, Anna. I think it's very important what you stress, and it's indeed very relevant, the work that you are doing. From a more personal perspective, how do you think your personality or your personal interest strengthen you as a scientist?
I guess I have some characteristics such as interest in getting to know a region better, to study some region and the behavior of the physical environment. I like to observe, having an observant eye and a lot of patience, because researching with nature requires patience, calm to collecting data, depends on climate. So I think that brings me closer to like researches, observing and patience, and like to understand how nature works.
Indeed. And is there something that you would like to share with the next generation of scientists?
Yes, I guess we cannot have a selfish view because development only happens with the participation of everyone involved. I guess this is what I want to share with next generation.
It's very important advice, I think. Thank you for sharing. And again, a little bit from your personal experience. We are going to see later your interesting talks, but if you can anticipate maybe something about your probably personal experiences, and in particular, is there something that or experience or people that you met along the way that shaped your perspective on sexism?
I guess for me, the discussions in feminist collectives on college were very important. We promote the discussion of varied themes, and after my participation, I could understand how our society is sexist and racist too, even more. So I guess it's important to promote discussions in this theme.
I agree. And in terms of your career, your academic career or your work, is there any academic paper or any other way of knowing that has impacted you the most? And if so, why?
I guess I don't remember academic paper specifically, but academic paper is important, but it's very, I guess, public selective. I think that access to books, lectures, and discussion involving academic and society are the best way of knowing. Going to national, international conference, for example, and to promote meetings to discuss some things it's important to get knowing.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your experiences, and we look forward to see your presentation.
Thank you, Viviana. My pleasure. So everyone, it's a pleasure to talk about gender and groundwater. I would like to start the presentation by reading excerpts that carry the historical gender inequality, but which is also a social inequality. If the work of women writers is generally undervalued and neglected, the work of a Black woman, poor and slum dealer finds it even more difficult to overcome the barrier of invisibility. I will talk about Carolina Maria de Jesus. Carolina is one of the great Brazilian writers, a Black woman and lower class, a garbage collector and slum dealer. She was concerned with what she would eat that day, with the repetitions of the search for water every morning, and with the brutality of the environment, the city, the favela, the people. We can observe in some excerpts of the book Quarto de Despejo, a book that appears as a metaphor for social inequality. For example, I got up at 5 a.m. to get water. Today is Sunday, the favelas collect water later. I went to the river to wash clothes, and I found Mariana, a nice, decent woman. She has 9 children and mother home. I woke up at 7 a.m. with my children talking. I left the bed, went to get water. The women were already on tap, the cans in around. And in these phrases, we see how water is present in the issue of gender and social too. This presentation will focus on my reality, Brazil, and sometimes specifically Jequitinhonha Valley, where I live. But this is a reality of many countries, of global south, many. So there is inequality in all levels. These pictures show us who is the mainly responsible for water. You can see on downtown, picture on downtown, the woman carrying water, and who is the leadership who works with water. The vast majority are men, and we can see in both pictures side by side. In Brazil, less than 10% of the representatives in our National Congress are women. There is a gender disparities in leadership. Gender considerations lack in policy making. It's becoming a vicious cycle for keep inequality. Water assessment only meaningful with a gender perspective. So let's talk about some Brazilian realities. Despite being a right guaranteed by law, 35 million people do not have access to drinking water. 90% of the lack of basic sanitation infrastructure is located in areas of irregular housing in the cities. Some numbers about what we just talked. According to UNICEF, women and girls from around the world spend 200 million hours per day collecting water. In the Brazilian semi-arid region, there is a data of 2 hours per day to collect water. Imagining that in a woman's life, impact of life on family and society. Access to water is marked by social issues. The central point is inequality. The sexual division of labor ends up delegating to women the entire workload of social reproduction, especially in relation to caring for people and domestic tasks. In Carolina Maria de Jesus' book that I show you, she denounces the neglect of public authorities and the lack of access to quality piped water, as well as structural racials directly affecting the social spatial segregation of cities and the maintenance of racialized impoverishment. We can speak then of feminization poverty. If there are more poor women, the lack of water affects women more. Black and poor women have less access to water. And I guess the consequences, and what is the consequence of that? Women stop studying, many women stop going to school because there is no hygiene in the woman's bathroom, for example. And when we talk about groundwater, we can remember that most of the total water available is on the groundwater, but about more than 4,000 million meter cubic per year of sewage is injected into the aquifers, contaminating them and restricting the groundwater available for population. These women then need to go further and further in search of quality water, or they end up more vulnerable to waterborne disease. This picture that you are looking shows us a woman who is collecting water from a contaminated source. This picture is from my region, Jequitinhonha Valley. The Brazilian health systems calculates more than 111 deaths between 2008 and 2017 caused by disease related to contaminated water or poor sewage management. And it is inconceivable to know that even in 2022, this is a reality in Brazil and in many, many other countries. The state of Minas Gerais, Brazil, is rich in ore and highly exploited. And this exploitation is often associated with accidents, or I better say, environmental crimes. These women are fighting against extraction of lithium that treat water and families of the Jequitinhonha Valley region. They are sharing the posters who says water belongs to the people. Water is a right. So thinking about gender and water, I guess, is fundamental to think about development. I live in a region now known Jequitinhonha Valley, where a large part of its population lives in extreme poverty. And despite being rich in rivers, one of the main complaints of the populations is the lack of water. This picture is a Jequitinhonha River. And to try to supply the lack of water, tubular wells and cisterns are used. And many times the water company, Copasa, Copanor, does not offer the population a quality service with a guarantee of quantity and quality water for all. We have lots of problems and complaints about this situation. They charge absurd fee for water and sewage, which in most cases is not treated. These pictures and the others that I show you on the presentation is from a book, Jequitinhonha Valley Quilombos, Music and Memories from Fogaça, 2017. And this book is very interesting because brings lots of women reports about lack of water for all uses. And we have lots of reports, but we don't have many data and resources to understand how, in fact, the inequality quantitatively is. So we need disaggregated data. Only 37% of countries regularly produce sex disaggregate data on washing, formal or unpaid employment. So back on this slide that I show you on the beginning of the presentation, we promote some initiatives to collect data to understand here in Brazil how woman is affected in some way by inadequate water supply, and or how is the limited access to decision-making process. So what has been done? There are 4 nice initiatives that happens and are happening too. The first one was a theme who was created on IH Congress. The other was our Brazilian survey, né? That we made here in Brazil. Social hydrogeology that are world surveyed in focus on gender and groundwater. And I am a participation nowadays on UNESCO projects. It's another Brazilian survey focus on water insecurity and then gender. So I will show you quickly what has been done. This was the first special session included in an important conference of hydrogeologists, Groundwater, Why Gender Matters. The other was a Brazilian survey who we published an abstract on a conference, and we published this in other discussions, and I will show you just two graphs that shows these inequalities in publication of papers and speakers promoted Congress by Brazilian Association, Groundwater Association between 1980 to 2019. And the results shows the inequality. Female participation in events historically brings few works, especially as first authors. But this participation has increased in recent years. However, in relation to speakers, that's the second graphs, female participation is still negligible. The other Brazilian survey was an online survey who is look for study and employment. We made to understand how is the participation of women and on study and employment. When analyzing the sector in the labor market and schooling, what stand out most in the real discrepancy in the function on wage income. So both studies demonstrate a huge gender inequality in hydrogeology sector. Even in management position and wage range, we can observe that the highest wage are given for men, and the positions, management positions, is for men to 8%, almost 8%. But when we look on study on PhD, most of the participations are women. And the next projects that I am participating nowadays is included on UNESCO projects on the cátedra. I am a member associated with the UNESCO Share Nucleus, Water, Women and Development, through of the ongoing execution of the project entitled Gender and Groundwater. So on this project we chose three, in the beginning we chose 4 cities in Brazil to understand the relationship of water insecurity and gender. For example, how the lack of water or poor water quality affects more women than men, and in which neighbor or regions of the municipality. So this is in progress. This is a project in progress, and this is a preliminary result. And I can show you the area here in Brazil. We decided to work with Diamantina, is in Jequitinhonha Valley, Ouro Preto, and both Diamantina and Ouro Preto are on Minas Gerais state. And the other city is Macaé, situated on Rio de Janeiro state. And we are making some maps to understand visually this relationship and the relationship and water insecurity and gender, but we are working on this nowadays, just preliminary results. So I guess it's just the beginning. Access to quality water means access to public health. We will have to claim and reinvent the society. We have to be political and to fight to support those who defend gender equality and the environment. Access to water and sanitation matters for all aspects of human dignity, from food and energy security to human and environmental health. The female fight, even for the most basic, is necessary to reduce inequality. Identify different roles and needs plus social cultural constructions to improve management and governance of world's water resource. So it's necessary finance projects in this area. This is what I would like to share you. Thank you, gracias, obrigada.
So thank you, Anna, for your presentation and for sharing this important information and insights. I think that your work and also the way you frame your research will be really of inspiration for many other colleagues worldwide who would like to start studying and checking better and unveiling the hidden connection between gender inequality and groundwater. So thank you very much for your time and for being with us in this episode.
Thank you, Viviana, for this very nice opportunity. Thank you. Bye-bye.